Hi, I'm Mayor Sendzik, and welcome back to Our Home with Mayor Sendzik. Today we're going to be talking about some wonderful festivals that will be taking place in our community, and also for those of you who are looking to experience some basketball, the FIBA basketball tournament is coming up and is in full swing. It's the Basketball of the Americas, so we've got some great talent coming from United States, Canada, Argentina, Trinidad, Tobago. They're coming up to our community at the Meridian Center to take part in a very important basketball tournament. It's the under 18 basketball group, and I'm going to tell you right now, as you're watching this at home, that I think Canada is going to bring home the gold medal. They have a wonderful team of a lot of talent. Some are projected to go in the top 10 in the NBA draft in future years. So if you want to see the Connor McDavids of basketball, come to the FIBA basketball tournament at the Meridian Center. It takes place June 10th through the 16th, and you will not be disappointed, and you'll be able to cheer on Team Canada and make sure that we bring home the gold right here in St. Catharines. So hope to see you out at the Meridian Center. And speaking of these kind of special events that take place in our community, and what I love about St. Catharines is that we're a city of festivals. So we have the Wine Festival, Grape and Wine in the fall. We have Rib Fest. We have the Folk Arts Festival, which just wrapped up in May, celebrating its 50th anniversary, and it's the longest continuously operating cultural festival of its kind in Canada. And we also have the New Vintage Festival, which takes place as part of the Wine Festival. So we have all these festivals that make up our community. In the Soil is another one that took place in the early spring. And it's an opportunity for not just our community to come together and celebrate something very unique, but it's also an opportunity to attract people from outside of our community. And so on today's episode, we're going to be talking to two individuals who founded a jazz festival in Niagara. And this year they're celebrating their 5th anniversary, and it's the TD Niagara Jazz Festival. And it's started by none other than Juliet, Dunn, and Peter Shea, who are joining us today on the show. Very accomplished musicians in their own right, and they've traveled the world. They have participated in a number of different productions, been a part of musical ensembles. Peter has performed with legends in terms of Canadian legends and been able to take the stage. And those of you who have been to the Performing Arts Center have seen the Charlie Brown Christmas special that they brought to the stage, which was a highlight of the year last year. And Juliet Dunn, you're just an individual that goes around the community, and with your beautiful voice, you're able to really capture something very unique in the essence of who you are through your song.
Thank you.
And it's interesting because, Juliet, you're not from St. Catharines, you're not from Niagara. Nope. You've lived the world. You grew up in Vancouver. You've been to the UK. You've really experienced music in different genres in different parts of the world. Peter, another one who's been able to travel, and yet you chose to call St. Catharines Niagara home.
Yeah.
I'm going to start with that. So why did you?
Can I address this one?
Absolutely.
It's been an honor and a privilege to have traveled around the world, to share that with my life partner. Even a bigger privilege and blessing. And through all our travels, I want to bring it back to our community. This richness that we've experiencing other cultures, performing there all around the world. We've learned so much, and I want to share that with our community. I grew up here, so
right.
I love this area, and I'm happy to.
Born and raised.
Born and raised, yeah.
And what's interesting about that is because we often talk about people who leave, and there's a lot of discussion about our young folks who don't see opportunity here. But you're a great example. You studied in the arts, you studied music. And a lot of folks would say, Peter, you should be in Toronto, you should be in New York, you should be in Chicago or LA, and yet you're in Niagara.
Yeah.
And you're doing well. No, you're doing well. Come on, don't be humble.
I haven't been evicted yet. Our home, we're still paying our mortgage.
But I think what a lot of people, I want them to hear at home is that you can stay in Niagara and create a career.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And you've done that.
Yeah.
And Juliet, you've been and I remember because we've known each other for a long time,
Years.
since you decided that this was going to be your home and you're going to lay down some roots. And the talk was, how are you finding opportunity here? And I think you found opportunity by creating opportunity.
Exactly. Because, see, I came out to Niagara. I was born in England, lived in Vancouver, and then lived in France. So that was kind of my trajectory. And the only reason I came to Niagara was because of the Shaw Festival. I got a gig at the Shaw Festival, and I hadn't heard of Niagara-on-the-Lake because I'd been living in France most of my adult life. And interestingly, at Shaw, you know, you work at Shaw, but then if the actors aren't asked back or you don't have an offer, they flee back to Toronto. And a lot of people at Shaw would think, oh, if I'm not at Shaw, there's nothing to do in Niagara. Wrong.
Right.
So, and I remember bumping into Jackie Maxwell, who was my artistic director. I had 1 year with Jackie, 1 year with Christopher Newton, and she said, bravo, because you've stayed here and you've managed to make a life for yourself here and not have to go back to Toronto or back to Vancouver or back to France. So,
And an important part of that, and sort of making these connections so that people can see how you create your own opportunities, is that you saw the connection between the wine and culinary sector, that it was growing exponentially at the time, and your opportunity to get into that market because your music was very much in line, connected. There was a relationship, a symbiotic relationship there. And I remember that. All of a sudden you started to see Juliet Dunn and Peter Shea playing. And who are these people? It was what's the name? Shea Duo?
The Shea D Duo.
Shea D Duo. And you started to see this name in ads and stuff.
I get that from my dad. I mean, my dad loves puns and play on words, so I used to play with a bass player. His last name was Dion, Serge Dion, so I said, Serge, what we had to do? I said, why don't we call ourselves the Shady Duo? And he was like, oh, I don't want to call ourselves this. No.
Then he met me. I think the only reason he
and
stuck
then I
with
met
me
Juliet.
is
She's like, okay,
my
that
last
sounds
name's
like
Dunn. He's like, perfect, you're in.
It fits. We don't have to change anything. I could finally have my band name. But it was interesting because you started to see your name being at venues, and there were, I would say, almost non-traditional venues, meaning that they were at the wineries and stuff. And so being able to build that, and again, you created the space, I guess is what I'll say.
Yeah, and you know another thing I must say is when I came out to Shaw in 2002, downtown St. Catharines, I've always loved St. Paul. And this is long before there was the Arts Center in the Meridian, and the architecture, so somebody coming into St. Catharines going, this is so cool. You know, years before, and I've always wanted, and I must say it's a highlight, Peter hasn't been there yet, but just yesterday for the first time, see, growing up in Europe, patios and things like that, right? So last night I was at Mate Cafe and Lounge, and the patios are open, and I was like, oh my gosh. You won't believe it, because you haven't seen it yet.
I have. It's
so
a heartwarming
great.
thing. No, I was there the other day.
Oh, you were? Okay, I wasn't there then.
I was so joyful because like, finally, this is finally happening. This is
Very
amazing.
exciting.
And it's interesting because I have a Montreal connection where you look at the patios in Montreal and they're all on the streets. And that's what downtown is starting to remind me of is the Montreal experience. Or Ottawa, where you see just by Capitol Hill where they have Parliament Hill, where they have the... And so let's start to talk about sort of the downtown revitalization, and I want to get into the festival. So the TD Niagara Jazz Festival, 5 years in, and the growth of that. So let's talk about the past and sort of the idea, where'd the idea come from, and then let's go into this year because I think you got some great lineups coming up.
Yeah, so the idea, we were traveling a lot, 5 winters. We met and almost immediately we kept going overseas for the winters to do different gigs.
Like 2 months after we started dating, we were
in Hong Kong
doing
for
our
3
first
months.
contract together.
Got to know each other real fast.
Got to know each other pretty quick.
We did have separate rooms at first, which was good.
This is good,
But it was a really good contract. So 3 months in Hong Kong, we did Morocco and some high-end cruise ships. And then I got a job at Jazz FM. Oh, so in between there was a one-off Niagara Jazz Festival that Michael Reason had started, and he ran Music on the Henley. We volunteered. We had a great time.
Michael Reason used to be a conductor actually for a time for the Niagara Symphony. So, and then his wife got a job, and she had to move out of town. But
so at that time we were like, oh, a festival, and then no, too much because we were traveling all the time. And then I got a job on the radio at Jazz FM 91, and that was 2011. So I was kind of grounded. Every week I was doing my show, so we couldn't travel. And then we thought, oh, we should start a jazz series, and that's kind of how it started. We started it at Stella's, and then it moved to Mate Cafe and Lounge, and now that's moving into year 7. But yeah, we started a series, and then in 2013 we thought, why don't we take the series outside? Because we had this vision of doing an outdoor jazz festival. And we did it in Fort Erie, Twilight Jazz on the beach, and it was a train wreck.
And
we performed in it. We were the roadies. We were emceeing. We did everything.
It was pretty funny. And then at the end of the night, there was a swarm of these sandflies or whatever like that. And
it wasn't
They
glamorous.
went into all the speakers and all the equipment that we had rented. We had to
it was a
clean
good
them out the next
idea.
morning.
Then we realized you need more of a team to put on a festival. So it kind of evolved that way. And our vision has always been the Niagara region. And we know it's special because we're trying to explain to different musicians who are coming from out of town. One of the bands from Holland was calling it the Niagara Falls Jazz Festival. We said, well, no, it's the Niagara Jazz Festival because it's about the region. We do things mainly right now in St. Catharines and Niagara-on-the-Lake, but also Beamsville. And so the first year we were just in Niagara-on-the-Lake. The second year we decided, let's show everyone that it is the Niagara region, not just Niagara-on-the-Lake.
Right.
But what I decided to do in year 2 was, Peter said, what we did in year 2 was really a year 5. I kind of went boom, and we went all over the place. Yeah, it was like insane. So now we are in year 5, and now the expansion that we've done, and it makes more sense because of the way the region is set up, is we do lead-up events in Beamsville and different communities. We're still now we're 2 weekends, and we're focusing St. Catharines one weekend, Niagara-on-the-Lake one weekend. And as we grow, we'll fill in the days and do different communities. We're really about, it's really nice to be able to walk to things. And so our big vision for St. Catharines is we've got the Performing Arts Center we work with, Mate Cafe and Lounge across the street. There's different restaurants across the street now that have patios to have, maybe shut down the street and have something all on one day. Walking eventually. We've got Market Square. I mean, there's so many opportunities.
So for this year in St. Catharines, and tell us about, because we got a few minutes, tell us about the Port Dalhousie.
Right.
Big one.
So another big expansion this year is a world music event. So it's the Jazz Festival presenting world music because there's a big connection between world music and jazz.
Sure is.
And we love world music, and so we love Port Dalhousie as well. We've always loved Port Dalhousie. We live in Port Weller, so it's not too far. And so we thought, let's do world music on the beach. We're bringing in steel band. We're bringing in reggae. We're bringing in a Turkish music, klezmer, a Japanese jazz singer, and I know I'm forgetting people.
Oh, wonderful.
It's so exciting, and because we do have funding from the City of St. Catharines, the Ontario Media Development Corporation, Celebrate Ontario, and Tourism Partnership Niagara in terms of government funding, and then of course our sponsors and our main title sponsor, TD. Because of all of that funding, we were actually able to bring in 2 bands from overseas this year, featuring lots of local Niagara world music bands. Hamilton, we've got the Latin Vintage Orchestra from Hamilton, and then also Toronto bands. So exciting, and it's free.
And it's free at Lakeside Park.
Free at Lakeside Park.
Which is amazing because we just invested a whole lot of dollars into bringing that park back to life. We now have what is going to be a world-class concert there. And now, just quickly, how do people find out about the artists that are coming? Where do they have to go?
Excellent. Yep. So the website's NiagaraJazzFestival.com.
Okay.
Nice and easy. On social media, we're at Jazz Niagara on all platforms of social media. It's free. One thing we are doing in Port Dalhousie is, because we know that it can get congested sometimes, so we're talking to some of the owners of different properties. We're going to set up a bike valet. So we really encourage people to bicycle down.
Come down on your bicycle.
And then it's kind of like a coat check.
It'll be valeted like a coat check. They'll valet your bike, and then you can just enjoy, and then you don't have to worry.
And we got that
about
idea
driving.
from the Pelham Summerfest. I'm going to do a plug for them because I learned about that idea, and I thought that's a great idea.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've learned a lot about the Niagara Jazz Festival, the TD Niagara Jazz Festival, and it takes place July 19th, 22nd, and July 27th, 29th. You can go to the website to learn more about the artists that are coming. Peter and Juliet, thank you very much for taking the courage to launch a festival like this 5 years ago, and thank you for your continued leadership and bringing this artistic endeavor to our community. Hi, and welcome back to Our Home with Mayor Sendzik. I hope you enjoyed the first part of the show where we learned about the Niagara TD Jazz Festival that's coming up in July. On the second part, we're going to be talking about a development that's taking place in Port Dalhousie. And a lot of folks have been talking about it. It's been in the media. Council has been part of the information sessions. And it's about the Lincoln Fabrics building in Port Dalhousie. So I'll call it the old Lincoln Fabrics building in Port Dalhousie. And on the show today, we have Sheldon Rosen, who is a Toronto-born architect, went to the University of Toronto School of Architecture. His career has included a number of significant builds in many parts of the world. He has a great track record of building in communities, but also building parts of communities. And he's part of the SDR group, which is a co-developer with larger multinational partners in various parts of the world. And I think it's important because a lot of folks, when they look at what we're building here in the community, they are looking at who's actually doing the building. And that's an important part of our discussion today, because when you build communities, it's also about vision, because you're setting your sights for a build that will be there for probably more than 100 years. And so, Sheldon, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you very much.
And I know you've been in the community now for a while, and I want to welcome you to the community again and talk a bit about your love of the building. It is a very iconic building in our community, the old Lincoln Fabrics. And you've loved that building for a while.
For a long time. I mistakenly was putting out the word that I had originally tried to purchase the building 15 or 20 years ago, but when I was at that community pop-up community care dinner, one of the people from Lincoln Fabrics pointed out to me that their records show that the conversations actually took place in 1992. So it's been a while since we've had an interest. We actually bought the building back then, but conditionally. David Howes, who is the late owner of the building, had sold it to us on the condition that he could replace that building with a horizontal building because they were making fabrics.
Right.
And that's a horizontal manufacturing process, and he was doing it in a vertical building.
Yes.
So they were not able to find a home at that point in time. They recently moved to Grimsby, but the people were working there were loving that building. He loved that building, and it was very well taken care of. So even before that, I mean, I'm older than from 1992, as you might see, but I was first introduced to Port Dalhousie when the steamer came from Toronto, and that was, back a long, long time ago, and the carousel was there and the beach was there, and that was the first of my introduction to Port Dalhousie, and I've been back to it umpteen times since. And when the building came available again, it was something we really wanted to do because you're right, it's unique, it's iconic. It's one of those waterfront buildings that actually sits in the water.
Right.
It's
a lot of folks don't know that.
irreplaceable.
There's a corner of that building that sits above the water.
Sits above the water, and the building was originally powered by a water wheel that ran the belt system. So it has a lot of history, a lot of heritage, and what we're doing is we've gone about to bring the building back to what it looked like at the turn of the 19th century, into the 1900s. And so there's a lot that's missing there now that we're going to replace. And when it's finished, it will have a remarkable resemblance to the original building. It'll be a full restoration.
And so I want to go back in history.
Yes.
And there's that site itself that the building sits on. Describe what that site was prior to the current Lincoln Fabrics building being there, or the current building being there.
When it was originally built, we have drawings and photographs that we were able to get through the National Archives in Ottawa that show that it was actually two buildings with a bridge that spanned over what is now Lakeport Road.
Right.
Lakeport Road was right up against the front wall of the old Lincoln Fabrics, but when it was built, it was maple leaf rubber.
Right.
And so it was a building that was built to be very strong, to hold very high floor loads. And over the years, the second building, which was now facing onto the Henley Regatta Pond, was removed, as were other things like the cupola and the flagpoles, and lots of the windows have been blocked in. Right. But for the last 100 and some odd years, it's been a private building that nobody's been able to go into, particularly when Lincoln Fabrics took it because they were making Kevlar, which, as you know, is a bulletproof material.
Right.
And there are certain priority.
Right.
So, but it's back. It's coming back to the public.
So the interesting history on it. Back in the turn of the century, early 1900s, that would have been considered a tall building.
It was at that time the tallest building. It was internally, it was 4 floors at the front and 5 floors at the back, but it had industrial ceiling heights.
Right.
So from floor to floor, it's about 15 feet.
And the space itself, the land mass itself, that's not the traditional land mass. That was man-made, and there would be a water course that was there. So, and I think that the pictures that your heritage consultants have brought forward shows that it was largely always more of an industrial nature usage area. A lot of infilling went in to make sure that the buildings could be sustained there. And like you say, part of it's built on the waterway. So the history of it was largely of an industrial use.
And it was Welland Canal originally. So yes, all of what you just said is true. Of interest, where the parking lot is to the north of our building was a sort of a raceway of an overflow, if you will, from the upper pond to the lower.
Right.
And so where the parking lot that services Pier 61 restaurant currently exists, that was all fill, and our foundations for our extension to the building are going to have to go down to bedrock, which is about 60 feet down, as is the original building.
And I think the unique part of that is that there's already been a lot of sort of changes to that area, specifically where Lincoln Fabrics, the building, sits, over time.
Correct.
And what, I'm not putting words into your project, but you're looking to bring life back to that building. And then talk to us about the secondary project, the second building that you're looking to. How does that all fit together?
Well, it's all one building.
Okay.
It's, and what happens is there presently is the remnants of an addition that was done shortly after the original building was done.
Okay.
It was not well designed in the sense of they did not take into consideration what the ground situation was, and the foundations were inadequate. So over the years, this building became an Eiffel Tower. The addition became an Eiffel Tower and started to lean. So they took off 2 floors.
Yeah, I remember David Howe talking about that.
And they took it off to stop the momentum of the building tipping.
Yep.
It still is.
Yeah.
And every year they squeeze some more polystyrene between the buildings so the air doesn't get through, but there's a widening crack. And so the intention here is to take that down so that it ceases to be a dangerous building and put back a new addition in the same place. It's a bigger addition, but it's in the same location, and so the heritage of the building comes back from that point of view.
So that becomes then the extension point of connecting the secondary building or project.
Yeah, it's all one.
Okay, so it's all, and I think, because explain how it's all one. So you'll be able to go from the Lincoln Fabrics current building, if you are a resident,
Yes.
you'll be able to walk, without going outside, you'll be able to walk into the adjacent building.
Correct. So it's what we've had to do, and it worked out very well, is we created all the elevating devices where the two come together. And so because there's a difference in floor heights between the old building and the new building, the elevators open back and front. So if you live on the 5th, you live either 5th North or 5th South, you press that button and it takes you right to your floor, and the staircases and everything are designed so that all the floors work together. So it's,
And you see
it's
that.
continuous.
You see that in other adaptive redevelopments in Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, where they have a modern building built beside a historic building, and they're able to do that. That's called architecture and engineering.
It is, and it's also heritage.
Right.
Because heritage design has changed over the years as to where it thinks it ought to be. Presently, and I think it's transitional, could be 100 years of transition, but it's transitional. Currently, the thinking is that you don't try to make the new part of the building masquerade as if it was always there.
Right.
You make it compatible with the heritage aspects of the original building, and that's exactly what we've done. We have heritage consultants, the region has heritage consultants, the city hired a peer review of all of those people, and they all agree that the way that this has been designed is in fact compatible and appropriate, and so we're very excited. And the vast majority of people, there's always somebody that won't, but the vast majority of people can see the merits to what this does, because it's great for the community.
So outside of the preservation of the heritage aspect of the buildings, how many units are you projecting to be built in that complex?
There's more than one answer to that, and they're all true. What's happening is we're in the stages of taking requests from people for information and dealing with it, and we ask them to give us a feedback, so we are in fact getting marketing information from them. Turns out that the vast majority of people want suites that are bigger than we originally thought were going to be intended. So we made an application to the city that had a little over 150 units envisioned, but it's going to be significantly less than that.
Okay.
And we won't know until we're finished with the pre-marketing.
Right, and where I'm going with this is that the projects like these bring people into the area, and with people come challenges that others who are currently there highlight. So, are you surprised by the challenges that you faced since taking over this project, or is this something that you would have expected?
Every community has pretty much the same challenges. In this particular case, I can tell you with assurance that the vast majority of people are really quite pleased with what they anticipate will happen. But there are those who are maybe long time residents, and the older you get, the more resistant to change you become. But there is an appropriateness factor that has to be considered, and we're dealing with it, and we always have to deal with it.
So what would the cost on a building like this be? What's the investment that you're looking at?
Very interesting question. We are bringing probably something close to $70 million to be invested in that building. A lot of it goes to the refurbishing and the restoration of it, because it's more expensive to rebuild than to build new. And in order for that to be accomplished, the city has been pretty realistic with respect to some horse trading that's gone on, so that the public benefits that come to it, like the public park and the walkways that are not presently there, the loss of Pier 61 to make it into a public park, all of those things. But it's like 100,000 days of manpower that comes to the community. Plus, when it's finished, there's, say, 130, 140 families who can afford to live there, and who therefore have some very significant spending power.
Right.
So the spending power is measured in millions of dollars per annum. Right. And when you spread that over the community of Port Dalhousie, plus the spread that it'll bring into St. Catharines generally, it's a very significant up for the merchants who are presently suffering in the Port Dalhousie area.
So, Sheldon, I want to thank you for being on the show, because I think you've given us a good perspective on the heritage and your approach to the heritage preservation, but also how you're trying to tie the project into the overall sort of the portscape, I'll call, the Port Dalhousie landscape. So I want to thank you for being a part of this process and for seeing the challenges as also opportunities in our community. The City Council will be making a decision in early June on this project, and that's going to be an opportunity for staff to report back and offer a recommendation based on all the information that has been gathered from consultants, from the region, from the community forums that have been held. So there's a lot of decisions that have to come forward in order for this project to move forward. But what you've heard today is the kind of projects that are now being considered here in the city of St. Catharines. We're a growing community. There's a lot of opportunities. You're going to hear more about exciting projects like this, and also about the challenges that they bring to St. Catharines and the opportunities. So, Sheldon, thank you.
My pleasure.
And enjoy yourself and be safe. And as the kids come to the conclusion of their school, make sure that we're watching out for the kids as they enjoy their summer vacation. Until next time, enjoy.